one of the biggest things I've seen change in my short time has been, how coaches coach. You used to be able to, oh, Tony, you messed up. Get back on the line and give me 50 push-ups, and you would do 50 push-ups, and then you would be better because I yelled at you.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work anymore. Kids don't want to be yelled at, and if you're going to, quote unquote, get after a guy like that, there has to be a big back foundation to it. There has to be a great relational foundation there.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Reclamation Podcast. I'm Tony, and I'm excited to bring you a brand new series. That's right, a series for the first time ever on kids' anxiety in sports. Anxiety is best defined as nervousness, uneasiness, kind of fear of the unknown. And anxiety is all over our culture. So for the next 4 weeks, we're going to take a specific look how anxiety is impacting our student athletes, our students, and even ourselves. Because 31%, according to the National Health Institute, 31% of adults are dealing with anxiety issues. And that's only the cases we know about. Today, I'm excited to bring you this featured conversation with head football coach for the Centerville Elks, Brent Ullery. In our conversation, Coach Ullery talks about mental toughness in his players, what he's doing to develop that. He's talking about how social media is affecting coaching and his program in general. And he also shares with us a little insight how coaching has changed from his playing days to now his coaching days and what that means for the next generation. If you're a parent, if you know a parent, if you might be a parent someday, or you've ever dealt with anxiety, you're not going to want to miss this. Also, if you're into the anxiety conversation, over at Restoration Church Centerville, we are doing a sermon series on the very same topic. It's called Everything's Fine. You can find out more about that on restorationcenterville.org or on our app, Restoration Centerville, which can be found on the iTunes and the Google Play Store. Without further ado, here's my conversation with head football coach Brent Ullery. Hey everybody, welcome to the Reclamation Podcast. I'm Tony, and I'm excited to bring you today's conversation with a friend of mine, Brent Ullery. Brent, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Now, Brent plays an important role in our conversation that we're having all month about kids and sports and parents in sports and what does it mean to raise kids in this generation with pressure around sports and anxiety and performance and what parents are putting into their kids for sports. Brent, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what you do for Centerville schools and kind of a little bit about your story, how you got there.
Okay. Well, currently I'm a math teacher at the high school, upstairs West Unit. I teach primarily juniors and seniors, some sophomores.
You teach advanced math too, don't you?
Enriched math.
Enriched.
So yeah, the ones that are either on track or they're either enriched students or they're on the track to be advanced placement students.
It's the hard math, in other words.
Yeah, there's harder math, but yes, yes. Some people call it hard, but
numbers are hard for me no matter how you slice them.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
So my hope is that the students don't think it's that hard when they finish. So
that's a good goal.
Yeah. So, but I teach math upstairs, and then I coach varsity football year round.
Now, I'm going to pause there for a second because you said something that's really important. Year round. Mm-hmm. Give us anybody who's listening. What does your varsity football schedule? Now, Centerville's a D1 school, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
D1 school. It's kind of known. It's produced some big names in the football universe. Mm-hmm. What does your schedule look like year round?
Well, the season's the season. Once August hits, it's 7 days a week, all the way through. Whenever you either don't make the playoffs or you exit the playoffs, you get about a month off, or you have to take a month off according to the state, and then. At least since the time that I've taken over, the incoming classes of upperclassmen have always asked, how early can we start? And they want to get back in the weight room. They want to start working out and everything. So that usually starts about December and carries through until May. When May finishes and school year finishes, you take a little mini couple-day break. And then June, July, kick it back up again and do some camp days, and you're back in the season before you know it. So it's a lot.
How many hours a week do you think that you put towards football?
Out of season, if you're talking about that whole December through May, with kids, I'm only putting about 10 hours max per week.
Sure.
That's on the high end. But towards football, you're probably looking at the 15 to 20, where you're scheduling meetings or interviewing potential hires, or meeting with players, talking with parents, or responding to emails, whatever.
Doing podcasts with the kid up the street.
Yeah,
that
having fun.
Yeah, right. That's it.
Fun.
It's good.
Yeah.
So how did you get into coaching, and kind of tell us about your role as an athlete? Because you kind of had a great career in your own right.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was very fortunate to play football at Ohio State. I got lucky, and long story short, one of their coaches was doing his scouting and just kind of ran across me while looking at other players. They were never looking at me, and just said, look like a guy that Tressel might like. We got a couple of guys that Tressel really loves, and AJ Hawk and Mike Nugent already.
Because you're a Centerville guy.
Yes, and they know they knew what they were getting, and I said, sure. But there's no question after they said that. I hung up the phone to play it cool, but then I called him back like 30 seconds later and said, yeah. So my dad was sitting right there with me, and it was a no-brainer. But I was able to do that and able to parlay that into a teaching. I got a math degree at Ohio State and my license through UD and Wright State. But my coach at Ohio State at the time, a guy named Daryl Hazel, most recently was with the Minnesota Vikings and Purdue Boilermakers head coach. Anyways, I put him as a reference. Didn't think that people would actually call him. Found out that Dublin City, I applied to Dublin City Schools, and he actually called them.
Oh, wow.
And they said they were done hiring. They were done taking new candidates, but they hadn't filled the position yet. And he, in less words, said, "You better interview this guy. Like, you need to interview this guy. I think he's going to do a great job." And I interviewed. They brought me in. I drove up a couple days later. I did 2 rounds of interviews in one day. Met with the football coach after that. They hired me like 3 weeks later, and I got lucky to start my career up in Dublin,
which is a powerhouse in itself, right?
Yeah, they it's very similar to Centerville. Dublin, Ohio is. Kids test really well. A lot of involved parents in the community. Great sports programs and everything. I was at Dublin Kaufman High School teaching pretty much the same subject, the enriched pre-calculus, statistics, discrete math stuff, and did that for 5 years. Learned from Coach Crabtree, and came back down here to Centerville. When my wife got a job locally, she's also a Centerville graduate, so it was pretty easy to come back for us. And then, 3 years later, Rodney Roberts decided to retire from coaching, and the job was open, and I just happened to be the chair closest to his, I guess. So,
I think I appreciate your humility, but I know it comes with a lot of hard work and sacrifice. Couple things about your story that I want to ask. Your dad is a pretty famous, I guess, is for lack of a better word, at least a very well-known coach in Centerville football lore and history. Did you play for him at Centerville?
Yes, I played for him.
What was that like as a student athlete? Pressure-packed. Your dad's the head coach. Is he one of the most winningest coaches? Is he the winningest coach in Centerville football history?
No, Bob Gregg is.
Bob Gregg, okay.
Well, Bob Gregg has a lot more years, too. Bob Gregg was here, I think, 27 to 30 years, somewhere around there.
Got it.
My dad was only a head coach for 13, I believe. I could be wrong, a year or so.
Close enough.
So, yeah, Bob Gregg is the winningest one. Bob Gregg, for a career, had 301 wins. I don't know how many were at Centerville, but more than what my dad had.
Sure.
But anyways, yeah, he won a lot of games, and what he did is, and the humble response from him would also be, he perpetuated the tradition. He didn't try to redo what Bob had already done. Bob Gregg did all the hard work here, and now the jobs of the rest of us is kind of just keep it going in the right direction. So we're all building off of what Bob laid a foundation for.
So you're a student athlete. You're playing football for your dad. You get looked at by Ohio State, so you're pretty good. What's the pressure like in your life as a high school student? Let's just say your senior year. You're going into your senior year. Your dad's the head coach. You're going to play college football somewhere. What's going through your mind as an athlete, student athlete?
I never really felt pressure from my dad to do anything. Some people don't know this about me. Like, I played baseball as well in high school, and then after my sophomore year, I played varsity baseball as a sophomore, and not a lot of people did that, but I was fortunate enough to be able to have that opportunity. And I came to my dad after my sophomore year. I was like, this isn't for me. And my dad was a college baseball player and everything, and he had helped Tim Ingleday coach baseball, and they were close friends. And I'm like, it's not for me. I don't care. He goes, I don't care. Like, if it's not for you, then don't do it. Because if you don't love it, you're gonna hate it out there. So don't play. And that's the advice I took, and that was the right decision for me. I tell my players, I don't want people to think like, oh, well, I was trying to specialize, or it was too hard, or something like that. Albeit it was very difficult, and I did end up spending my now vacant time focusing on football. I didn't do it to focus on football. I just did it because I didn't love baseball. I really only loved pitching, but they don't let you pitch every day, and your arm will fall off if you did.
you gotta do something else in the baseball field, right?
Yeah, but I never felt pressure from him, and he's fully supported me. Never felt pressure on the field. Never, felt pressure to do anything out of my capability in the locker room or in practice or anything like that. And he never really treated me any different than any other players. We had opportunities at home where I could have conversations with him about practice or whatever, but that other players didn't get. But
I typically find that most coaches are actually harder on their own kids than they are on other kids, at least in my limited experience so far. So I can imagine if you didn't give 100% effort at home, when you got home, your dad let you hear about it.
Yeah, and there was that I didn't want to let you down, kind of, because if he's going to work so hard, why wouldn't I work so hard, kind of deal.
Yeah.
But I think every kid should feel that way. Not just the son to the father coach. It should be the guy next to me to my dad, even though he's not his son. If he's working hard, I should work hard for him. So I would work pretty hard and kind of keep my nose down. And I did. The only time I really felt pressure, and it was never put on by him, it was just a presence there, was, when it came to the decision-making process. And when it's like, okay, do I want to go to this party that I know about, or do I want to stay out of trouble? Well, I'm just going to stay out of trouble because I don't want to, let down what my family's doing here.
Sure.
Or something like that. But, he never had his thumb on me or anything. And,
yeah.
Very rarely did he ever say, no, you can't do that. So.
Well, it sounds like a good, healthy balance. How did that balance translate into collegiate sports? You go to Ohio State. I think there are very few people in the world who will get to experience college athletics at that level like you have. How would you describe the pressure as being a football player for Ohio State?
Well, let's preface it by the guys that were actually playing probably felt a different pressure. They probably felt a different one. Typically my pressure was the Tuesday, Wednesday practices where you have to be perfect because the defense is expecting you to be perfect so they can get as good of a look as possible. But it's different. It's definitely different. You have to find a way to juggle your time, and there's a lot of pressure to, like, as a walk-on, if your GPA, even you could be the greatest walk-on in the world, but if your GPA slips too low and you're no longer bringing the team GPA up, they could just cut you for that. So there's a lot of pressure there when you're not a guy that's on the field every Saturday to do all the other things right. Never miss a lift, always be there early, do every drill right. My receiver coach, Daryl Hazel, that I talked about earlier, he gave me some great advice. I still give it every year. Was to all our players, I say, just don't be a drain. Don't siphon the energy out of the room or the coach or whatever. Like, if you have a question, you can ask it. But if it's a question that's already been answered, you need to know that answer already. And don't ask me how to run route XYZ if the guy next to you just asked how to run XYZ. So I took that to heart, and I said, you know what? I'm never going to bother this guy. All I'm going to do is try to produce for him and see where it gets me. And I think it did well for me.
Got me a job. Obviously got you a job, right? Yeah. At a huge school in a premier city. So what year did you graduate from Ohio State?
2008.
2008. Yeah, and so for the last 11 years, you've been coaching high school athletics and doing math, more or less. How have you seen the sport change from a coaching perspective, looking at the students today? Because it kind of, the preface of this entire conversation is that there's a weird kind of pressure and stress, it feels like, on a lot of sports, especially in kind of affluent middle upper class communities like ours at Centerville. And I think across America, people are just so focused on performance. How has it changed from 2008 when you finished playing college sports to now where you're coaching at a D1 high school at a pretty elite level.
Well, I know this isn't the point of the conversation that we're having, but I will just plug it. Like, I do feel like the sport has never been safer. I feel like a lot of changes in the sport have been around safety and protecting the athlete, which is great.
I love it too. I've got 2 kids who play football, and the Wee Elks just bought a whole bunch of new helmets. I'm super excited about it. I got to plug them all year, and I think it's a great investment. I agree. The game is safe.
It's great.
As safe as it's going to be. It's still people flying after each other, tackling.
It's still fun.
Right? Yeah, it's what we need.
But one of the biggest things I've seen change in my short time has been, how coaches coach. You used to be able to, oh, Tony, you messed up. Get back on the line and give me 50 push-ups, and you would do 50 push-ups, and then you would be better because I yelled at you. That doesn't work anymore. Kids don't want to be yelled at, and if you're going to, quote unquote, get after a guy like that, there has to be a big back foundation to it. There has to be a great relational foundation there, where that kid knows whatever you're doing, doesn't matter what you do, you're doing it to help me. Whereas back when I began playing, if the coach said jump, you just, how high, how do I? It doesn't matter if this is your first day coaching me or not. I'm just going to do it. I don't think that exists anymore.
What do you think has attributed to? I'm going to say styles, like a softer style versus a harder style of coaching. What do you think's kind of attributed to that, where the players today, because I do feel like it's all connected, where the players today can't handle or don't want to handle. I'm not even sure what the right way to say it, because I'm not necessarily want to put a connotation on it, but there has been a fundamental shift in people's ability to receive harsh criticism, I guess.
And I don't think, let me think about how I want to word this. I don't think that there's a difference between the harsh and let's just use a bad word here and say soft. The softer and harsher, more harsh approach to coaching. There's more than one way to skin a cat, right? Both ways can work. I think previously, and if you're dating back decades, the harsh way was the only way that people seem to believe worked. So all the people that did it and all the people that were successful were
right. Bear like Bryant's and those kind of
and all the flying off the wall stuff and the Jimmy Johnsons and all that stuff just going crazy, right? And that worked. Those guys still exist, the people that coach like that, and some of my players may even tell you that, hey, Coach Ullery's like that. I don't know, but I think coaches have figured out that there's other ways to do it, and there's other ways to relate to players, and there's other ways to maximize their potential, because you're never going to get anything more than a player's potential out of them. So it's just, how do you do it? If this kid can get yelled at and you can just say, hey, go faster, and he'll go faster, okay, then just say go faster. But if this kid over here says, I need to trust you, and then I'll go faster, okay, then you're going to have to establish a relationship with him. He's going to be the kid that you're going to have to send a text message and say, hey, how's your mom doing? I know she started a new job, or whatever, to know that you care about his life. And then when you say, hey, go faster, he'll go faster. There's just different ways of doing it. Both are yielding the same results. There's the Tony Dungy approach, where he's very methodical and relates to his players, boom, 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 and he winning Super Bowls. And then Greg Popovich with the Spurs, the guy looks like his head's about to explode off his head, and he's winning world championships as well. So there's different ways to do it, I think.
When you look at the athletes that you're coaching today versus maybe your teammates or you, do you attribute like the general change in receiving that to the culture? Is that I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, do you relate this to social media? Do you relate this to the digital world we live in? Any thoughts on that?
I could see that. I have heard students say, and players say, like, oh, look, I got 200 likes, or, oh, how many followers do you have, and stuff like that, and where, they're kind of measuring themselves based on how many times the heart button gets tapped on a picture. And it means nothing to us, right, in our generation, but in their world, I think it means something, and maybe they need that self-validation, or they need to be praised before they can be constructively criticized. I don't know. It's
interesting. I know I have a 7th grader, and he follows an 8th grader. He'll be a freshman basketball player who just got verified on Twitter or on Instagram, right? And And my son thought enough of it to mention it to me, which at 13 is a miracle unto itself. How do you deal with that I'm not even sure how to deal with it as a parent, where I'm actively engaging in my son's social media screen time and all that kind of stuff. How do you deal with social media? I mean, apps like Huddle, where you can create your own highlight reel, and that's a good app. Like, we used it. I love the app. How do you deal with that as a coach?
See, that's what's happening right now. Is we have a generation of coaches that were coached different than they're being expected to coach children today. So that's where we see a divide. And it's not just football; it's all sports.
Yeah.
Where that's where you see all these news stories and everything. This coach did this. This coach did that. Well, a coach probably did that to them, but you can't do it to this next generation. It's not. It can't trickle all the way down. It kind of is ending with us, and we have to be the ambassadors to this new way of coaching, which is, more relational and more conversational and more, trust building than just run through a wall and see where the bricks lay. But with the social media and everything, sometimes I run our team Twitter.
Yeah.
I have my own Twitter account. I have a Facebook account that I use to promote our youth program. I do know that social media is out there. I try to use it for good, and I try to, glorify if we have, perfect attendance kid here, or this guy signs a college scholarship or whatever. I try to praise the kids because they deserve it for what they've done. But at the same time, I try to, live a life where that's not something I'm chasing. And hopefully they've recognized that, like, here's this guy that is my leader, I guess, for lack of a better word, and he doesn't care about this stuff, so why should I? Because when it's all said and done, whether you're in the classroom getting ready to take an ACT or you're on the practice field getting ready to play in a game, like, when you're doing either of them, no one cares what your social media account looks like. No one cares how many people like you. And when you're on the football field, the only people that matter that like you are on your team. And they can't tap a heart button. They can't double tap a picture on Instagram. They are going to show you that they like you by playing for you. And that's the only thing you should care about. So, I don't know. I do the social media thing partially for them and, to help with the program and everything, because I feel like I should, but it's not something we
the reality is
spend a lot of time on.
There's a lot of optics. There's just a lot of everybody sees it. Everybody sees it. So it's a constant battle of, trying to figure out what to do and how to do it. And a lot of the studies that I've read says that could be contributed to what's promoting the anxiety in our young student athletes. As a matter of fact, one study I read said that the anxiety levels that 54% of our student athletes have now is similar to what would have put you in an insane asylum back in the early 50s.
Wow.
Like, it's because it's that addictive kind of. So, you've got 70 some odd players in your program at any given time, not counting the WE program and all of the other kind of downflows of this massive operation. How do you tell players to deal with their stress and anxiety of things like playing time and performance anxiety? And I mean, because it seems like it's on the rise more than I've ever. I mean, when I played football, you just played. There was no, and if you were bad, you didn't play, and people just told you were bad, and that was fine. Like, it was okay. I can remember Coach Place at Chaminade Julian, where I went to high school. He said, son, I think you got a great heart, but there's no way I can protect you on a football field. So unless you grow, you're probably never going to play. And I was like, thanks, Coach, and I went and got a job. It was fine. It was fine. How do you deal with that today in this world?
It's funny. We're studying. The whole team is studying Ryan Hawk's podcast right now.
Yeah.
And the last one we just studied was JJ Redick's, and he talked about it being a head case.
Love that episode. Love
phenomenal.
that episode.
Quick plug for the Learning Leader Show, right? But so JJ, he was talking about being a head case in the court and blah blah blah, and he's missing all these shots, and he gets really upset when his teammates would say, "Hey, keep shooting," and he's like, "Well, duh, I'm gonna keep shooting. You're paying me to shoot. That's what I do. I'm a shooter. I'm gonna keep shooting." And then Ryan asked him, well, how do you get out of your own head and everything? And he said, and we talked to our players extensively about this last Monday, and that you just got to rely on the practice. Like, you just rely on what you've been doing and trust the process of what you've been doing and all those repetitions over the years, that eventually it's going to straighten itself out. You know, like if you've been working the right way and taking care of your body and training the right way and living the right life, not lying, not being deceitful, not, you know, lacking effort and trying to fake like you're giving it. If you've been doing things the right way, you're just never going to be perfect 100% of the time. So it'll work itself out of the rut. And I tell our kids that at school too. Like, yeah, these kids that come in, like parents may get divorced, or, you know, a sibling or family member may pass away, or, you know, dog pass, whatever. A lot of them going through a lot of tough things.
Yeah.
Know, boyfriend, girlfriend breaking up.
I mean, not to mention
the
their body is literally changing every day.
Every single day.
Every single day.
And they're getting scrutinized or bullied in some way or another. Whether it's intentional or unintentional, they're doing it to themselves or whatever. It's a big deal. And what I tell them is, like, just invest in the process, and all that stuff will work itself out. You know, like, if your parents are going through a divorce, don't hide at home and cry in a room. Come to school. Come to school and get around teachers that, like, genuinely care about you. Get around your friends that genuinely care about you. Do math that has nothing to do with your parents, but it'll make your brain do something for a half an hour, and you're not thinking about how sad you are that mom moved away or whatever that may be. So
that's the first time I've ever heard math as a suitable counseling. I love it. No, I think it's great. But you're right. Yeah, I love what you said there. Invest in the process. Mm-hmm. Invest in the process, because what you're investing in will generally produce dividends. Mm-hmm. Right. So if you invest in your own anxiety and self-pity and your own negative self-talk, then that's what you will get dividends in. And so how much do you think of you mentioned Monday that you were having this conversation, and you got your team studying the Learning Leader show, this great podcast. And how much of your coaching time, percentage-wise, do you think is put on towards mental coaching? And has that number gone up? I mean, that you're in your third year, right?
Yes. Yeah. My first year, all I coached was football. I called plays. I taught guys how to catch a ball and how to be in the open area at the right time, essentially.
Sure.
And I thought that was football. And as I'm working my way through this process, I'm realizing that I need to be doing less of that and more of getting inside their heads and figuring out what they need from me.
Man,
not what they want, but what they need, what they genuinely need from me. And do they need someone to push them? Do they need a shoulder to cry on? Do they just need someone to talk to so they can just vent and then they're going to be good? But I'm doing a lot more of that these days, where I spend a lot more of my time investing in players versus investing in football. And we'll see if it pays off. Everyone tells me it's going to pay off. It's the route I've chosen to invest in. So
how has that changed you?
You see things in a different light. Having a son, having a daughter, and has started changing my thinking, and now shifting to this way of coaching has changed my thinking considerably. You have a little bit softer side. I'm not saying that practice is any easier.
Right.
Running is not any easier. We're not going to lower our expectations by any means, but I do sympathize a little bit more with what players are going through, what coaches are going through with their families and stuff like that, and kind of puts in perspective, that not everybody's going to go home and watch this Beaver Creek film for 15 hours and get ready for Wednesday's practice. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
So I better invest in what I can invest in.
As you look at your own kids, because they're both really young, mm-hmm. What are your sports dreams for them? Do you have any yet? Have you thought about it? I mean, listen, I got 3 kids, and I think parents, dads especially, probably have at least thought about it once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm a firm believer my kids can do almost anything that they would want to do.
You say almost, like the one thing they're not allowed to do.
I do know the one thing that my son is not allowed to do, and it's only him. But I'm not going to say it on air.
Okay, fair enough.
So I don't lose any popularity or I don't have much right now anyways. But, and that could change. I'm open to that idea changing.
Yeah.
That he's not allowed to do that, but it hasn't been changed yet. So they can do whatever they want. My big thing is going to be I want them to have open doors for them. So if they want to pick a sport and be really good at it, or if they want to, I'm going to try to get them to try all the sports, but whatever they choose is up to them. But they're going to do well at school. They're going to do well, and their mom's not going to accept any less from them there. So they're going to do well there. They're going to keep their academic doors open. We've been blessed. they're most likely, barring some catastrophe of some kind, most likely they're going to go to college, and I want them to have options to be able to explore whatever university they want. So
I love that. I love the emphasis on the academics, because I know, and I've heard you say it multiple times, that's one of the most important things that parents can do to help prepare their student athletes for college. Mm-hmm. So I'm a little bit ahead of the game in terms of where my kids are, and it's insane to think about the amount of money that we parents, that I'll use I statements here, that I put into my kids' sports. Mm-hmm. From my son's playing 13U baseball to, my 9-year-old wants to play baseball and summer leagues for basketball, and we're playing all the different sports. Mm-hmm. So this is your chance to give a message to parents out there about their emphasis on sports in their kids' life. What's the one thing that you really want to tell that parent out there who is mortgaging everything so their kid might get a little bit better?
Yeah, if they think that everything that they're doing is helping their kid, if they think everything they're doing is helping their kid, then they need to humble themselves, because if their kid is meant to be discovered by the NBA, let's say, or their kid is meant to be discovered by Ryan Day at Ohio State, or Nick Saban in Alabama, or whatever, any sport, you name it. If they're meant to be discovered, they're going to get discovered, especially in a place like where we're at right now, in Centerville. Like, there's no need to travel the country. Here all the time. There's no need to travel the country and see the world and experience this. And some people may argue and say, well, they're getting better competition, so they're getting better. I'm not going to argue that either. But I don't think that that's worth me spending all kinds of my money and my energy on that when we could be growing as a family, when you could be growing academically. Because the bottom line is, and I've had some great players. I just had one sitting in my office today, an alumni, and I won't say his name because I love him to death, but his grades were not good enough leaving high school. And he had all kinds of college coaches coming in saying, what's his GPA? And his GPA was not good enough. I said, sorry. And they let us know if he does JUCO.
Yeah, as quick as they walk in, they just walk out.
Yeah, and it was really unfortunate for him, and now he's landed on his feet. He is at a Division I school now. He's figured it out and able to transfer, and et cetera. But, I mean, all these people that spend all this money on, they're investing in the wrong people. They, if you think about it, like, why invest in a travel baseball coach that, he's just taking your check and then taking you to Nashville is all he's doing. Whereas your high school baseball coach is the one that really cares about you, is the one that's really going to recruit for you, the one that's really going to market you, and is actually going to be there for you if you need anything else. That travel baseball coach, as much as you think he likes you, if he lives in Indiana and his son's an all-star and you just happen to be on the team,
right?
It ain't happening. It's not happening. It's a waste of time. Same with the trainers. I hate these trainers. You and I were talking about this off air. Like, these trainers are they're always the good guy. They can always tell you how great you are. But why are these parents investing so much money in the players? Like, invest your time in the school. Invest your time in the program. Like, if I'm going to use my football players, for example, instead of giving your trainer all your time and energy, why don't you give that to your team? Like, give that to your team, give that to your coaches, give that to your academics, and I'll bet you're way better off. But these parents get caught in this paradigm of, I feel like I'm missing out if I don't provide this opportunity for my kid. And I don't know what I'll do. Right now, if you ask me if my son could age, 12 years right now, and he's getting ready to do travel, whatever, like, I'm probably going to nix him from doing that. Like, I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong, but I'm just saying I want you to compete, and I want you to go out and try new things, and I want you to go have fun. But there's a whole other world outside of athletics, and the percentages say it that a small percentile is going to make it to where they want to make it. Everyone else is going to kind of get there and realize that they don't really like it, so they'll just stop. So I don't know. I saw something funny the other day on the internet or whatever. I was reading through it. Said 5% of athletes have perfect attendance at their school practices.
Yeah.
Less than that make it to Division I.
Wow.
Wow. So, like, if you can't even do what your high school is asking you to do because you think what you're doing is better, then you're never going to make it.
And what I really hear from you saying is invest in the sense of community and the athletics will take care of themselves.
100%.
And invest in the education and invest in the, and honestly, if we cheered as loud for grade cards as we did for touchdowns, things might be a little different. Things might be a little different. How do you deal with, because there is a sense of pride. I mean, we even use the hashtag Elk Pride, and I put it out there as much as anybody does. How do you deal with the pressure that comes from outside of your program for the program? I mean, we saw it a little bit last year on social media. We see it. I mean, people genuinely are excited. Maybe I don't know if it's appropriately excited. I don't know what the right answer is. But how do you deal with that with your players? How do you deal with that for yourself? I mean, that's got to be. I think you have one of the hardest jobs in all of Centerville, actually.
There's certainly some scrutiny out there. I'll give you that. And I will not lie. At one point last year, I did read some comments that I guess were going on some Facebook posts, and somebody was sending me screenshots of it, and they were not nice, to say the least. And then I'm sitting there reading. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, what's this helping?
Right.
So I've kind of started practicing abstinence as far as reading social media comments and everything. There's definitely pressure from the alumni, and probably more pressure from the tradition of Centerville football, but that's okay. Pressure turns coal into diamonds, right? So you just try to use it to make you better. And I will say this, that the alumni base, I've never felt the alumni base's stronger support than I did last year, when it was a pretty dark period for us. We weren't doing so well, and you would think that they'd bail and jump ship, and I'm getting text after email after phone call, yada yada yada, like, hey, let's grab coffee, hey, you got our support, hey, what can we do, can we just buy the team dinner, whatever you need to do, let's keep these kids' spirits up and let's keep working. And I'm just like, whoa, here I am feeling like I'm letting you down, and you're just you're jumping in the bandwagon. So it was pretty cool to see that. But we talked to our kids about our why, and I admittingly, my why was wrong. I used to work hard and put all these hours in for the tradition and for the alumni and everything, and while those are a byproduct, I changed my why into, I'm going to start doing this all for my players. And when you take the pressure and move it, the pressure is always going to be there. If you say it's not going to come from the alumni, it's not going to come from my principal or my athletic director, the pressure is going to come from my players. And those are the ones I don't want to let down. So I'm going to work hard for them. Now all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier to work, and you know what they want, and it's a lot easier to be a servant, really.
That's very well stated, and I think it reinforces what you said earlier about working for the community rather than just working for the accolades or, in this case, tradition, right? So it sounds like you have a really well thought out routine about how you approach the year. Can you kind of take us through that process? Because I imagine that there are some parents and maybe students who are listening to this podcast right now who are wondering, well, what do I have to do to get mentally tough? It sounds like you've put some things in place. Can you take us through your year in terms of mental toughness and maybe what daily disciplines that you do to stay mentally focused and ready to go?
Sure. It's funny you say mentally tough. That's like our theme for the year. And I'm not a theme guy by any means, but it just keeps resurfacing. Like, we need to be mentally tougher. And what does that look like? That looks like doing the little things right. And it looks like perseverance and handling adversity, etc. And we always, call upon those scenarios whenever we see them. Like, handling this way is being mentally tough, whatever that may be. But so we've kind of woven it into our program, that we're going to make ourselves mentally tough by putting ourselves in very adverse situations. We're going to make ourselves really tired and then start over. It's essentially what we did today.
Yeah.
We just, hey guys, you got to get from point A to point B. And right as they were about to get to point B, said it wasn't good enough, go back to point A. And now you're as most tired as you've ever been, and you know where you have to go. You know what it took to get there. You just have to do it a little bit more, and you'll be successful. And just things like that, we're trying to kind of ingrain mental toughness into them and let them see what it looks like, what it looks like to.
That's awesome. To
do more than you think you can do more than what we say the little voice in your head is telling you to stop, and you can probably do a little bit more. And we always, wrap it up, and you look around like, hey guys, you're tired, but no one's on the ground. You're able to walk out of here. You're healthy. Okay. Timmy might have, puked in the trash can. That's okay. But you're better for it. You feel fine now. Let's go do it again.
Yeah.
Kind of deal. So it's definitely a process to figure out how we're going to do that. I spend a lot of time. I figured out that as a head coach, you don't do much football. You do a lot of. It's kind of like a principal at a school. You don't do any teaching at all. You just find ways to make people better. You don't actually get to do it. You just have to find resources and ways to help people make themselves better. So you find ways, like, I'm going to make my players be better by putting them through this circuit today, and I'm going to make my coaches better because I'm going to assign them this duty to be with their players. But I'm not going to teach them how to do it. I'm just going to give you a resource and say, go figure it out and do it in your own way, and all that. And the coaches know. I'm very transparent with them. Like, hey, I'm coaching you to be mentally tough too. Mentally tough coaches, you're not going to give in when your players keep demanding from you.
Right.
So it's a process, but it's
what's
a fun one to think about.
What's your personal routine in that? How do you stay mentally tough?
You got to stay grounded and understand your why. Like, my why is my family and my players, and that's it.
Do you write that down anywhere?
No, I don't have it written down. I have a burning conversation with our players last year, ingrained in my head. I can see everyone where they were sitting, who I looked at when I said this, and how I felt when I knew what I was saying was wrong. And I just think about it all the time. So I keep my why centered. I know why I'm doing things. My personal routine is I'm going to get up early in the morning for a multitude of reasons. And I tell this to my players, like, it's my selfish time. Like, we talked, like, it's 4 a.m. I have to get up because no one else is awake. No one else can ask me to do anything. So I'm just going to be selfish, and that's when I'm going to exercise. And I exercise because, A, I like to, try to be in shape, or at least work off the brownies I ate. And B, like, I know I need to exercise in the morning before I see them because I have to demonstrate stuff to them, and I can't demonstrate it if I'm not loose, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, like, I just exercise. Like, this morning, I rode 5 miles on the track on my bike just so I could be loose and run around a little bit with the players when they needed me to demonstrate certain things or whatever. And I'm hoping that at least me being able to do that rubs off on them. Maybe they see that I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of sleep for them, and maybe they notice it and they're willing to sacrifice a little bit of something for me or whatever. But after football's over, it's family time, and go back to being a family and go back to picking up my son and playing at the water table in the backyard. And
how does your family, I guess your wife at this point is really
Mm-hmm.
the only one who has to deal with it, deal with the pressure of this kind of position, and I can't imagine that's a lot. That's a lot. How does that impact you guys during the football season in terms of pressure that it puts on the family?
We don't feel any pressure.
Okay, good.
I'll just be completely honest with you.
I love
She's
that.
100% supportive. She's willing to pick up the kids.
Right.
She's willing to pack the lunches or whatever. She knows that Sundays I'm kind of a ghost. Saturdays I'll give you everything I got. And during the week there's certain days and times I'll give you everything I got, man. But like Sundays, there's 10 Sundays there where I'm going to be a ghost because I got to write scripts and practice plans and all this stuff and watch an absurd amount of film just so I'm doing the right things. But she's great. She's supportive about it, and she does whatever she can. She groups together the wives, and she does her own part to try and make the program special.
That's awesome.
Like kind of like I don't even know. She's a phenomenal cheerleader, but also like a cheer mom because she's like rallying everyone together.
Yeah, that's great.
She makes sure that the players see me and my kids together, so she'll bring my kids up to practice, bring my kids up to team dinner and everything, just because she knows how important it is that people see me being a father and a husband. But she's great, so we don't really feel too much pressure at home.
That's awesome. And well, I think it goes back to your why.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're really clear about why you're doing all this, and if your wife's really clear about why you're doing all this, then there's no way that you can mess that up because you're clear about what your priorities are.
Yeah. Can I tell a quick story
Please,
about that?
yeah.
She, when the job opened up, I came home and Rodney Roberts told me that the job was going to open up in like 18 hours or something like that.
Now, were you guys living in Centerville already?
Yeah, this is my third year teaching in Centerville.
Okay.
I was assistant coach on staff, and Rodney Roberts goes, hey, he comes into my classroom and goes, and I thought he was going to meet with me and talk about offense or whatever. He had just made me the offensive coordinator. And he goes, hey, I'm going to resign. Just letting you know, if you want to get your ducks in a line or whatever, it's totally on you, but I'm going to resign for my own reasons, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So I'm thinking to myself, like, here we go again. Like, another head coach and blah, blah, blah. Like, I wasn't thinking anything. And I went home and I told my wife, I remember sitting on the couch and she goes, I tell her, I'm like, Rodney Roberts is going to resign tomorrow at noon. I don't know what I'm going to do. She goes, I know what you're going to do. You're going to apply to be the head coach. I'm like, what? Like, you know, we have a kid due in a week and a half. And you're going to tell me that I need to apply to be a head coach? And she's like, yes, you're going to apply to be the head coach. I'm like, I don't know. We need to think about this. She's like, I don't have to think about it. I'll tell you the same answer tomorrow morning. She goes, you're going to apply. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't even know that that's what I wanted to do, but I immediately knew that I had her support, and she was willing to do whatever it took. And she was 9 months pregnant. I was 3 credit hours away from finishing my master's degree, and I was already enrolled and everything. And she said, you're doing this. We'll figure it out. So.
And you did, didn't you?
She figured it out, and I'm still trying. I'm still trying. But
yeah.
Yes.
You had another kid along the way.
Yeah.
You played some football. You won some football.
Yeah.
Like, it's been good.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun, and she's been supportive, and she's never backed down from her word, like, at all. She said, I support you 100%. I'll do whatever it takes.
See, I think
unwavering.
When you talk about that, and to see your face light up as you tell that story and talk about your wife, it's great. But I think it goes back to what this whole idea that we're talking about when it comes to kids and sports and anxiety. Like, if you know why, and you're clear about your why and who you're doing it with, the best people in your community will make you better.
100%.
Your wife made you better. My wife makes me better all the time. She buys into my crazy ideas, and she grounds me, and she does all those things for me. And so who we surround ourselves with is critically important, which is why I love your kind of team first mentality when it comes to, why, family and these players. And so if every player on your team got really clear about the why, now you're cooking with gas.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I love that. I love that. So do you guys set goals as a team going into the year?
Yeah, I mean, we have goals. Traditionally they're football goals, like game goals.
Yeah,
and stuff
sure,
like that.
sure.
And we talk about attendance goals and everything like that, and
GPA goals probably. Yeah, just
and those are a little bit, that's a little bit wishy-washy because you call a duck. Not everyone's a 4.2 student.
Right.
And I'm not going to asking you to be a 4.2 student if you're not. I'm just asking you to be the best student you can be. And let's try to get some doors open and make sure we're in the right classes, etc. But yeah, we do make goals. Very rarely do we talk about our goals, like our end goals, like winning the conference or winning all 10 games or something like that.
Yeah.
I refuse to let anyone talk about winning a state championship.
Right.
I don't know that. I think I may have one coach that's ever been part of a state championship team, but no one. You don't really know, so don't talk about something you don't really know anything about.
Sure.
That's what I tell them.
That's a great point.
So that's what I tell them. Like, guys, I've never played in a state championship. I've never coached a state championship. I've played in a national championship in college, so I have some kind of an idea what it takes to get there. But no, we're not going to talk about that. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about the process, and we're going to talk about, okay, today we had a warm-up. We had to do a certain warm-up, and it had to be done this way. After this, we'll talk about the workout. It has to be done this way. And then we'll talk about the running. It has to be done this way. And then we're going to talk about the locker room cleanup is what we did. It has to be done this way. And we're just talking about the process constantly. We're not really talking about, hey, we got to be 3-0 going into conference play. Oh, man, we got to go to Springfield this year. We got to be ready to go at spring. No, we're not talking about any of that stuff. We're just talking about make yourself better.
Fall in love with the process. Fall in love with the process. Understand your why. I think that's solid for all of us, right? Like I imagine you have to lean in on this in the middle of the grind of the season, or what part of the year is the hardest part? Is it summer getting ready, or is it in the season when you're playing? Is it December when you're getting ready?
It's never in the season. The hardest part of the season is the last day when you got to turn in equipment because you're just not ready for it. Like, the tank is empty. Trust me. Like, you're running on fumes at that point. But it doesn't matter. You could if somebody said, "Hey, you want to play one more game?" You would say yes, like, in a heartbeat. No coach would ever disagree with that.
I don't think any player I think that will probably never play again. right? Because everybody wants to play one more game. Let's get one more in.
Yeah. And they wouldn't care like, hey, that means we're gonna have to run gassers for 3 days to get ready. Like, okay, we're gonna play though. So I don't think it's that. I think the hardest part of the year has got to be May is rough. The weather turns. We've been in the weight room for now almost 6 months and doing the same thing over and over again. And all you want to do is touch a football, and the state says you're not allowed. So we're just out there lifting and running and trying to get ready. May's a little bit of a grind.
Yeah, that sounds
it's tough. It's tough. You try to get outside and let them push sleds instead of benching and stuff like that just to mix things up. But
yeah, it seems like it would be, especially because these are still developing young men, right? And so emotions are all over the place, and you've got all that testosterone built up. Yeah, no, I could see where that'd be a huge grind.
Yeah, it is. It's tough, but it's fun. It's fun. I really enjoy the process, and the hardest part for a lot of coaches is that off-season weight room. But I think that might be my top 2 favorite places in the world. In the football world is the weight room. I think if you're going to affect a program, you're going to do it in there, and I like grinding it out. I do. I like sweating it out. I like getting excited if I see somebody with really good squat form or really good deadlift form or something like that. Like, that really gets me excited. So let's
awesome.
Hang out in the weight room. Let's go. So.
That's awesome. Okay, so one of the questions I love to ask people as we kind of get to the end of our time is if you could go back and give young player, your senior year of high school, Brent, one piece of advice. You're going into this big season, your dad's head coach, you have no idea that Ohio State's going to come knocking at your door. What's the one piece of advice that you would like to give yourself?
I would say, and I would give this advice to our kids, this kind of falls back on our anxiety thing. I didn't have anxiety or anything, but I worried about a lot of, quote unquote, the BS.
Yeah.
I worried what my girlfriend thought of me. I worried about what I wore to school, and hey, I just wore that blue shirt last Tuesday. I can't wear it this Tuesday. I had all those dumb thoughts that they don't matter. None of that matters. I should have spent more time with my friends. I should have spent more time with my family, less time with my girlfriend or whatever. I probably should have studied a little bit more. I was okay with that.
Yeah.
But I probably could have. But I probably, and that's the way I would tackle college version of myself as well. I would say, quit worrying about all this other BS, and it's all about you and your family and your friends, and just enjoy the process. Because if I would have cut out that other stuff, I would have had a lot more time, and I would have probably had a more successful career than I had if I was able to trim the fat, I guess. Stop spreading yourself so thin and kind of be deep.
Major in the major kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
a great
good
way of putting it.
That's a good word, I think. And any closing thoughts for any parents out there, or any future players, or anything that you want to say that you didn't get a chance to say?
Keep your kids in sports. Keep them doing it. Make them say no, they don't like it after they try it. Don't let them say no, I don't want to do it if they haven't done it.
I just thought of a question that I really wanted to ask you. As you mentioned that, are you a fan of keeping your kid in, once they make a commitment, or so they start their sophomore year, and in the middle of the sophomore year they decide they hate whatever sport they're in, football, baseball, basketball. Are you keep them in guy, or are you let them drop guy?
No, I'm gonna keep them in. I feel like you've committed, and people have committed to you. It's no different than when people transfer schools. People transfer schools looking for greener pastures, whether it's, hey, I can start over at this school, or this school's going to give me more college opportunities, or whatever. Those schools, those communities, those coaches, those players have all invested in you. You've invested in them as well, but they've invested in you, and you owe it to them.
I'm a keep it in guy too. I always tell our kids, you don't have to do this again, but you got to finish now. Yeah. Finishing's important,
and it takes grit to finish.
It's super important.
You don't always get to finish things that you like.
So. No, most people don't. Very few people get to the end of their career and be like, man, I love that. I'm so sad I have to retire. No, there's a reason why people look forward to it. Now, there's a few of us that get to do what we love, and more power to them. But you got to grind through it. You got to grind through it. So that's good. Thank you so much for taking the time today to sit down and chat with me about a multitude of things. If any of our friends wanted to follow you on social media, we know you're not super active, but where's a good place for them to start? Twitter?
Twitter, at Brent Ullery.
At Brent Ullery. And then you can also look up Centerville Football, and you're pretty easy to find.
Yeah, at CHS Elks Football. There's also the team Twitter if they want to follow us. And, I'm not great at posting on that, and my Twitter account's mainly pictures of my dog and my son and some CrossFit stuff.
See, that's a well-balanced Twitter account.
Yeah.
If people have questions about what to do with their kids and coaching, are you available for those kind of things?
Yeah. My email's public information on the
Centerville website.
Schools, website, and
great.
Hit me up and phone call or whatever, email back. It doesn't matter to me.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you, Coach, and I appreciate all that you do for our community. It really means a lot.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, everybody, don't forget, if you enjoyed today's conversation, the best way to make sure that you stay in touch with what's happening at the podcast is subscribe. Also, if you could, please do us a favor, share this conversation somewhere on social media, maybe with somebody who's never heard it before, maybe who's somebody who plays on your team or coaches with you. We would love to get the word out about how our student athletes can wrestle with this big old monster called anxiety. Until next time, I'll see you guys real soon.